Welcome, welcome one and all. Winter Wizard here. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how I like to paint fur pelts and leather for the Great Company of Frostpaws. Today, whoever you are, and welcome to this little video of mine where I'm going to be showing you how I like to paint fur pelts and leather for my Space Wolves army, the Great Company of Frostpaws. Yes, we're here in the Frozen Fortress. It's cold and lonely, but I've just made a lovely cup of tea over there, Terran Gold, and I'm joined as always by my comrade and co-host, Norwegian Troll Dimmu, so this is going to be nice. We've got another installment of painting the Frostpaws here for you, so I'm going to dive into the tutorial reasonably quickly. I just want to very quickly explain what's going on here though. So this is a painting series dedicated to unveiling all the secrets, all the tips and tricks for painting the colour scheme of my Space Wolves army, the Great Company of Frostpaws. I'll be doing a multi-episode series, breaking down all the different aspects, and in this episode I'm going to be focusing in on the fur and leathers, and I'm going to be, as the series goes on, I've been applying all of it to a single model here, all of it to Ragnar here. So if you watch the entire series from start to finish, you'll get to see Ragnar here, painted entirely from start to finish. Yeah, so we're just over the halfway mark, and we've done a lot on Ragnar. There's not huge amounts left to do, but still reasonable portions to go. But we've got today, as I said, the fur and leathers. So he's got this lovely cape on the back here, with some wolfy fur, wolfy pelts. He's got a nice big wolf pelt on there, on his shoulder, and he's got a couple of little pouches and a holster there. So we're going to be painting those up in leather as well. So I've got quite a few different things to show you in this one. So I'm gonna try and get straight into this. First off, let me show you what paints I'm going to be using today. So I actually want to do the fur. I'm going to do it white actually. I quite like the nice white fur, so I'm going to show you my favourite way to paint white fur. So for that we're going to need some Wraithbone, the base paint here, and a layer of Screaming Skull. Then for all the other bits, for the sort of the pelty skin of the animal and other bits of leather, we've got some various browns. We've got Tuskgor Fur, Bugman's Glow here. Got Rhinox Hide, and we've got some Doomball Brown, and then there's a couple of on the sort of pelts, there's a couple of wolf claws and a nose still there. So for those we're going to paint them using some Abaddon Black, some Eshin Grey, and throughout the process of all of that we're going to be needing a nice portion of Agrax Earthshade. Okay, here we are, so we've zoomed in here, and the first thing I'm going to do, I think, is paint all the fur. We're going to do that lovely nice white fur. So I've got my wet palette here from Army Painter. I've got my trusty favourite starter brush, which I can't hold on to here. So always give your paints a good shake. You can hear a little clicking noise there. That is a couple of stainless steel mixing balls. Little stainless steel ball bearings, if you like, or mixing balls. Stick them in your paint pots. They really help keeping the paints nice and helped with the mix. So I'm going to crack this open. I've got a little old paintbrush head here that I use just to keep that pot open there. Pot of water and some tissue to the side over there. So the first thing I'm going to do is just base in the colour of the Wraithbone here. I'm going to start by sticking a little bit of this on my palette there, and a little bit of water just to thin it down, make sure it's nice and fluid. And I'm going to fill in anything that looks like it should be fur, of course. So he's got this lovely cape with all the fur on the back there. He's got the pelt on the shoulder there. He's got a little wolf tail pelt going on here as well. So anything that should be fur, we're going to fill in with a nice coat of this Wraithbone. Now when you're painting white fur, sort of a natural white fur, like something like on a polar bear, you'll notice it's not actually really white. It's more of a cream sort of colour. So that's what we're starting with. We're starting with this nice cream colour, and we're going to take it from there. So I'm going to fill in all these fur bits, and this will take a couple of coats. So a couple of thin layers. And that wolf's head on his shoulder there, I'm just going to cover the whole thing in it to start with. like so. So a bit on the cape on the back here and that little wolf's tail talisman thing there. So that's what we're going to do. Going to do that, give these a couple of coats, and then we'll take it from there. Here we are, so that's the Wraithbone now nice and dry. I've done quite a few, well, several thin layers, 2 or 3, just to build up a really strong colour there. And we really must make sure that that is entirely perfectly dry before we move on, because now we're going to be applying the Agrax Earthshade. So if it's not quite dry, then this is going to create one hell of a mess. So I want to make sure it's bone dry, and we're just gonna apply some of this shade all over the cream colour that we've just painted. Doing a nice sort of spread, consistent coat over it, making sure it's not pooling or building up too strongly in some areas. And you might think, well, if we're trying to create that sort of white fur sort of look here, why are we covering it in this brown? But it's just going to give it a more natural sort of look, and we're going to bring back that lightness afterwards. Just trust me on this one. So that's what I'm going to do. Apply some of this all over the bits that we've painted, keeping an eye on it as it dries, make sure it doesn't pool or look too messy. So here we are then, so that is the fur all now washed with the Agrax Earthshade, looking nice. So we're going to bring it up, we're going to lighten it up again, bring that nice white colour back to it. So, but we're going to start with a little bit of Screaming Skull again, nice sort of cream, and we're going to do a little dry brush here. So I'm going to get sort of an older sort of looking brush like this, and if you don't know what dry brushing is, just take a little bit of the paint, bit of tissue, scrub it in there, work most of the paint off of the bristles, and it should get a nice sort of dry finish to it there. So when we scrub things, it will leave that residue of colour behind. So we're going to do that. Scrub a bit of that in, and if it does end up being wet and damp on the brush, then what it's going to do is going to cause all streaky effects and run off, and it's not going to be very nice. So make sure it's nice and dry, and then we're just going to gently scrub this over the bits of fur, and it's going to catch the sort of raised areas. It's going to keep the shade in there, and it's going to lighten it up like so, as you can see. So just take your time with this, be patient, like with anything with painting, and build up that colour again with the cream. So that's the dry brush of the Screaming Skull now all done, and I'm not going to rinse the brush out. I'm just going to leave it dry, because we're going to do the exact same thing here with the Wraithbone. So get a little bit of that out, and this is just going to lighten it up one last time in exactly the same sort of fashion. So scrubbing that into the paper there, and always maybe give it a little test on like your thumb or something, just to make sure that it's not coming off too streaky. That should be alright. And I'm going to apply this again onto that fur, just to give it another little extra lighten. And you can focus the lighter one on the bits that are more sort of exposed to lights, like the way that this one here is sort of flicking up and forwarded, well, in the sort of the lower aspects of it, staying in the shade. Maybe won't focus too heavy on those bits, maybe just the bits that are up and out in the light, like so. And on the cape here, a little bit on there. So I'm going to play with this for a little bit, finish it up, and then we'll move on. Okay, so that's the actual fur of the cape now, nice and dry brushed and pretty much finished. A couple of little things to pick out here. We've got the claws on the pelt of the animal there, and the nose up here as well. So gonna bring out a little bit of Abaddon Black, and we're just gonna do a little layer of this on those bits. So just being very careful not to make a mess and get that on the fur. Just fill those in, as well as that. So there we've got the nose on the wolf up there as well. But as well as that, underneath these, the sort of pads, the padded feet there. So they've got the sort of round shape of the pad there. We're going to fill those in with black as well, just like so. Bits under the toe areas and under the flat of the foot, as well as the claws and the nose. So I'm going to fill those in, and then we'll give them a little highlight, and then that'll be all the fur done. Okay, so that's the Abaddon Black filled in, and last little thing, I'm going to bring out the Eshin Grey just to do a very subtle, tiny little highlight. Yeah, so the Eshin Grey. Yeah, so just a very small little highlight here. Just gonna put a little tip of that just on the sort of sharp edge of the claws, just to take the starkness of that black away, just like so. That's it. Tiny bit on the tip of his nose, and on the claws this side, and a little bit on the pads as well under his feet. And once we've done that, we are going to move on and look at some leather. Yeah, so we'll move on to the leather now. So we've got two types of leather that I like to incorporate into the colour scheme of the Great Company of Frostpaws, and I sort of split them up into these things like holsters and pouches and, you know, leather ties and things like that, the sort of more older worn leather. And I also do things, typically it will be on pelts of animals and stuff like that, something that looks a little bit fresher, looks more like more closer to the skin of an animal, basically. So we do those in two slightly different ways, but they're pretty much the same principle, if that makes sense. So the skin of the animals, so I'm going to do his whole cape and all the under sort of side of the fur pelts and things like that, like that. The way we're going to do that, first off, we're going to need some Tuskgor Fur. It's a very stark sort of pinky brown, this one. So, but this is going to be the main body of the skin of those pelts. So I'm going to cover all the cape in this, like so. So all the underside of the cape, I'm going to be really careful not to get it on the fur, but there's bits underneath the fur here as well, like under the fur arms, if you could see that under there. So we're going to go around and do all of those bits. So we're going to ignore anything that doesn't have any fur attached to it, basically we're going to ignore. So there's a little pouch here and a holster there, we're going to ignore that. Just all the bits that are attached to fur, all that kind of skin leather. We're going to start with a coat of this Tuskgor Fur. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll move on. Okay, that's the Tuskgor Fur, a couple of coats now nice and dry. We're going to bring out the Bugman's Glow next. And with this, what we're going to do some little bit of highlighting, a little bit of layering. This is going to be on the sort of, we're going to try and sort of accent the shape of the material here. So we're going to, for example, I'm going to put a little bit of this on the sharpest edges, like so, following the shape of it round. Like this. It's right on this shape. The edge, I'm going to put a little bit sort of down this, the way the material is bent here. We're going to put a little bit of this down there, like that. We're just sort of being selective where this goes, but you're using it to sort of sharpen up the dynamic of this. So any little sort of round holes and things like that, you can put a bit of this on that, just to give those a little bit of dimension around the shape of it around here again. I'm going to just put a bit of that around there. So especially those sharp ridges where it's bent, put some of that on there, like so. like this, a little bit up there, and that sort of sharp edge where it's folded here. Just being careful not to get too much of that on any of the fur that we've painted. And well, that's kind of the principle. Just applying bits of this where it feels like it makes sense to sort of accent the shape. We're not repainting all of the Tuskgor Fur. Just being selective, like so. It's going to give it a sort of more natural sort of, you know, muscular skin, fleshy sort of feel to it. So I'm going to continue playing around with this, and then we're going to give it a wash. Okay, so that's the sort of pelt all filled in there. It's got this really lovely sort of fleshy, muscly sort of texture and colour going on here. So if we was trying to keep this to be almost like flayed flesh or something like that, I'd probably keep this. Well, sorry, I'd probably wash this with something like a pink or something like that. But we're trying to create the effect that they're trying to turn this to leather. So for that reason, we're going to wash this with Agrax Earthshade, and that is simply what we're going to do here. Just again a nice smooth thin sort of coat of this all over that, all over what we've just painted. Trying not to overload it here. Slapping it on and then sort of manipulating it. Like this. And that's what we're going to do again. So I'm trying to keep this a sort of nice thin glaze. I don't want this to look too bubbly or too. I don't want this wash pooling in too many places. I don't want it to look too grimy, dirty as well. So a nice smooth thin coat of this, just by being careful with how much of this we're putting on. But I'm going to work around and apply this, and then we'll show you the result once it's done. Okay, so that's the Agrax almost dry now, and that is the sort of result we've got going here. So you could, once that's fully dry, you could reintroduce a little bit of the Bugman's glow if you wanted. You could do a little bit of, just a couple of little bits of highlighting once again. I may do that later, but quite frankly, I think I'm quite happy with that. I'm happy with that. So that's how, as I said, the sort of under the fur, the sort of pelts, the sort of animal skin. That's how I like to do that. Anything that's sort of a bit more sort of older leather has been turned into something like a pouch or a holster. Things like that I do slightly differently, but in the same sort of principle. So we'll bring out the Rhinox Hide now, and we'll get started with those. And you will see that the principle is going to be very, very similar. So we're going to start with the base colour of the Rhinox Hide. Fill in those details there. The holster here, and there's a little pouch tucked in there, just in there. I think that's about it. Oh, another one tucked in here. But we're gonna paint those, fill those in, a couple of nice thin layers of the Rhinox Hide, and then we'll move on. Okay, so that's 2 thin coats of Rhinox Hide done. Now we're going to bring out the Doomball Brown, and we're going to do a little bit of highlighting with this. I'm just going to be really careful not to overload the brush here. Just the sort of bare minimum on the brush. Almost think of it as like a, well, I don't know what to call it. Not a dry brush, a moist brush, something like that. And we're going to just highlight the sharp edges of the brown here. And I would suggest doing this in a almost sort of stippled sort of fashion. Dot it here and there. It's going to create a sort of nice sort of worn sort of stretched look to it, which is quite nice. You can do it sharper, more defined lines if there's sharper edges, but then I would also suggest just rubbing a bit of this off with my finger and just stippling a little bit of this over the body of the brown itself, just to create a little bit of a different sort of feel to how we did on the cape here. You'll have that sort of nice sort of worn and used leather look. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to fill that in and do the same on the pouch around here and the other bit, and then we'll wash these as well. There we go, so that's the Doomball Brown highlighted and stippled, and again we're going to bring out the Agrax Earthshade and just another very sort of thin, smooth coat of this over the top. Just like so. Just to give it that nice natural tone again. Lovely natural feel. And on the pouches, there and there. And then once that's dry, we're going to be all done here. And there we go then, so the Agrax Earthshade is now drying up there, and that is us done. So we've got our nice sort of lovely white creamish coloured fur going on there. We've got the sort of the leather of this sort of skin of the animal there going on the pelt, that type of leather, and we've also got the sort of more older sort of utility worn leather going on there. And that was how we do it. Pretty simple really, simple stuff, but I think effective. Well, and there we have it then. So that was another installment of Painting the Frostpaws, where in this episode I showed you how to paint fur pelts and leather. We've still got a few more episodes of the series to go. Next episode I'm going to be painting Ragnar's face and his hair, so keep a lookout for that, as well as the following episodes after that as well. If you've enjoyed the video today, then a like and a comment would be very, very much appreciated. And of course, as always, if you'd like to see more of what goes on here inside the Frozen Fortress, then perhaps you'll also consider becoming a subscriber. And once again, whoever you are, thank you very, very much for joining me today. I'm Winter Wizard, that's Dimmu, and for now, keep it frosty.